Hi, my name is Yogya Bhatia and I am a legal intern at LEXIS and Company. Today we'll talk about healthcare of prisoners. The word prisoner means any person who is kept under custody in jail or prison because he or she committed an act prohibited by law of the land. A prisoner, known as an inmate, is anyone who against their will is deprived of liberty. This liberty can be deprived by forceful restraint or confinement. Prisoners' rights deal with the rights of the inmates while behind bars. Prisoners have basic legal rights that can't be taken away from them. The basic rights include right to food and water, right to have an attorney to defend himself, protection from torture, violence, and racial harassment, and right to proper sanitation. According to the Constitution of India, the rights guaranteed in Part 3 of Indian Constitution are available to prisoners because a prisoner is treated as a person in prison. Under Article 19, the right to freedom guarantees the citizens six fundamental freedoms, that are freedom of speech and expression, freedom of assembly, freedom to form associations, freedom of movement, freedom to reside and to settle, and freedom of profession, occupation, trade, or business. Rights that a prisoner can't enjoy are freedom of movement, freedom to residence and to settle, and freedom of profession. But other freedoms conferred in this article are enjoyed by the prisoners. Under the Prisons Act 1894, prisoners have a right to accommodation and proper sanitary conditions. People believe that prisoners are sent to prison as punishment and should be treated inhumanly. This implies that the loss of an individual's right to liberty is enforced by containment in a closed environment. Thus, keeping the individual in the custody of the state should not, however, have a worse effect on him. But this is unfortunately the case to some degree or another in many of the world's prisons. Prisoners have rights conferred upon them by international treaties and covenants. They have a right to health care and most certainly have a right not to contract diseases in prison. Prison jurisprudence recognizes that prisoners should not lose all their rights because of imprisonment. Yet, there is a loss of rights within custodial institutions which continue to occur. Public health policies are meant to ensure the best possible living conditions for all members of society so that everyone can be healthy. Prisoners are often forgotten in this equation. They are in constant contact with all kinds of people who come in and out of prison every day. This constant movement in and out of prison makes it all the more important to control any contagious disease within the prison so that it does not spread into the outside community. In India, overcrowding has aggravated the problem of hygiene. In many jails, conditions are worsening. At tehsil level jails, even rudimentary conveniences are not provided. Prisoners in India are not even tested for specific infectious diseases, although all prisoners undergo a medical examination when they begin serving their sentence. No studies of prevalence of viral infections among prison inmates have been done at a national level. India's prison manuals provide for segregation of prisoners suspected of having contagious diseases. A few jails have established normal contacts with medical and social organizations for counseling of inmates to prevent the spread of infections. Violence in prison settings has many causes. Clashes may have ethnic causes or rivalries between clans or gangs. The closed, often vastly overcrowded living conditions also lead to hostilities between inmates. The tedious prison environment, lack of occupation of mind and body, and just plain boredom lead to accumulated frustration and tension. This environment leads the way to high-risk activities such as use of drugs. Some indulge in these activities to combat boredom. Others, however, are forced to engage in them in a coercive play of power or monetary gain. Risky lifestyles can lead to the transmission of diseases from one prisoner to another and pose a serious public health risk if unchecked. Contracting any disease in prison is not part of a prisoner's sentence. This fact becomes even more significant when the disease is potentially fatal, as is the case with HIV or AIDS. The Supreme Court of India, in its landmark judgment in Parmanand Katara versus Union of India 1989 and other, ruled that the state has an obligation to preserve life whether he is an innocent person or a criminal liable to punishment under the law. With specific reference to health, the right to conditions adequate the health and well-being of all was already recognized in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights furthermore states that prisoners have a right to the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. The minimum standard rules for prisoners regulate the provisions of health care for them. The right to the highest attainable standard of health should also apply to prison health conditions and health care. This right to health care and a healthy environment is clearly linked, particularly in case of HIV, to other first generation rights such as non-discrimination, privacy and confidentiality. It is the responsibility of the state to provide for health services and healthy environment.